The article that appeared online was the final piece of the puzzle, the one that made everything click into place. When it reached the top of the trending list, I knew it was time. I called her and asked for a divorce. It was a straightforward conversation. My monthly support from her was $3,000. When we talked about how we would divide our assets, Clara was remarkably calm, her face an unreadable expression. "If you find it difficult to manage on your own," she said, "you can always come back here. This house will always be a place for you." I managed a small, humorless laugh. "I don't think that would be a good idea. Your new boyfriend wouldn't appreciate that." With that, I stood up from the table and walked out of the room, my steps feeling deliberate and even. I took one look back and saw Clara Reed, a woman famous for her unwavering composure, still sitting exactly where I had left her. Her eyes were distant, looking at nothing in particular. The news that Clara Reed, the CEO of Reed Industries, had purchased a $300 million lakeside villa for her new romantic interest was the main topic of conversation in the business community. Her new partner was apparently a designer she had recently hired, a young man who looked like he had just graduated from college. He dressed in a chic, minimalist style and carried himself with an artistic flair. The question on everyone's mind in our social circle was how the CEO's taste in men seemed to decline with each passing year. Someone commented online, "You don't understand. At the end of the day, all women are drawn to a young, handsome face." Another person added, "You know, that young man looks a lot like her ex-husband did when he was younger." A wave of agreement followed that comment. See, women are all the same. They act like they're exploring their options, but they never truly get over their first love. I looked at the comments on my screen and couldn't stop myself from scoffing. Clara and I had no means of contacting one another. Since we had gone our separate ways, the only interaction between us was a monthly bank transfer for $3,000. The transaction description always read the same: living expenses. In her world, a new lover was worth a $300 million mansion, while an ex-husband was worth a mere $3,000. To suggest this was a sign of some lingering deep affection was ridiculous. Even though my marriage to Clara had been purely for show for the last 4 years, the image of that man moving into a lavish estate still bothered me. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the memories the situation brought to the surface. I can't recall exactly how many years ago it was, back when Clara's first business venture had failed, and her monthly income was only $3,000. We were living in a small, crowded apartment, but she had gone behind my back and secretly rented a slightly larger place. She told me with a smile, "Ethan, when we have money, I'm going to buy you the biggest, most beautiful house." I found out later that the rent for that slightly bigger place was exactly $3,000 a month. That foolish woman had chosen to live on instant noodles for a month, just so she could use her entire salary to surprise me. Perhaps it was the sting of seeing that $300 million figure, but I did something impulsive. I opened my messaging app, found Clara's name, and sent her the first message I had initiated in years. "So, where is my mansion?" I didn't actually expect her to reply, but as the hours passed and my phone remained silent, I found myself unable to sleep. I tossed and turned until the sun came up before finally falling into a restless sleep. Around noon, my phone rang. It was the family butler calling to gently inform me that I was running late. I checked my calendar and realized it was the scheduled day for my monthly visit with my son. It was also the day I dreaded more than any other. I hurried over to the mansion and found Leo sitting on the living room floor, engrossed in his toys. A young man was sitting with him, watching him with a soft, affectionate look. To anyone walking in, they could have easily been mistaken for a father and son. I stood there for a moment, recognizing him as the man from the news articles. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He looked up at me, and his eyes immediately became red and watery. It was no wonder Clara was willing to spend so much money on him. Even his expression of hurt looked artfully tragic. Just at that moment, Clara came down the stairs, and a single tear traced a path down his cheek as she approached. Clara looked as though she had just come from the shower, dressed only in a silk robe. A droplet of water ran down her neck, passing over an intimate red mark that caught my eye, and made me feel a sharp pang of something I didn't want to name. They were clearly comfortable with each other, I thought, feeling momentarily lost. "What are you crying about?" Clara asked him, her voice gentle and caring. "Miss Reed," the young man said, getting to his feet and looking at her with a timid expression. "I don't think Ethan wants me to be here. I should probably leave." He started to walk away, but before Clara could respond, Leo grabbed his hand. "Don't go! You're not allowed to leave!" The young man then picked Leo up. "Leo, your father is here to see you. I should give you two some time alone." Leo turned and gave me a look filled with animosity. "I hate my dad. He doesn't care about me at all. I only like you." The two of them then held on to each other, crying softly. Their display made me feel like an unwanted intruder in my own family's home. I watched them for a moment before speaking. Perhaps I should come back another day. I meant it as a considerate gesture, but Clara's expression immediately hardened. She looked up at me, her eyes cold. "Ethan, do you think this is a hotel? That you can just come and go whenever you please?" I was about to reply when I heard the butler's voice from the doorway of the study. "Sir, Mr. Reed would like to see you." Inside the study, Mr. Reed was seated on a large leather sofa. His fingers tapped an impatient rhythm on the armrest as his sharp gaze assessed me from head to toe. "Your health is poor, and you don't have the time to properly look after Leo," he stated. "Ryan is the son of a distant cousin of mine. I specifically brought him here to help take care of Leo. Do you have an issue with that?" I simply shook my head. Mr. Reed nodded. "As for you," he went on, "a man who can't even keep his wife and child is the most useless kind of man in the world." I mumbled in agreement. "You're right. I am useless." Past experience had shown me that arguing with Mr. Reed was a futile exercise. Agreeing with him typically resulted in less trouble for me, but I was not prepared for what he said next. "You will sleep with Clara in the guest room tonight. Use this opportunity to have another child. Then you won't have to be concerned about Leo anymore." I was in disbelief. Isn't Leo enough? Leo isn't perfect, after all. "It would be better to have another healthy boy," Mr. Reed said. "If that's the case," I heard myself say, my voice suddenly devoid of warmth, "wouldn't it be better to have one with Ryan? It's all Reed family blood, isn't it? What does it matter who the father is?" Mr. Reed was momentarily speechless, his eyes shifting away. "He can't. And you are Clara's husband now. This is your duty." I should have just said, "I understand." But the words that came out were, "I don't want to." A sharp slapping sound followed. I didn't leave the study until late that afternoon, the red imprint of a hand still burning on my right cheek. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, repeatedly splashing cold water on my face. I had been through this kind of confrontation so many times. Why could I never manage to control my reactions? As evening approached, I assumed they wouldn't expect me to stay for dinner. A dull ache was starting in my stomach. Just as I was about to quietly leave, I heard a soft voice call out, "Dad?" I stopped in my tracks. Leo was standing at the far end of the hallway, holding a small model he had built with Legos. I quickly tried to cover the swelling on my face and crouched down to smile at him. "Have you eaten dinner, Leo?" He looked at me for a long moment, then abruptly threw the Lego model into a nearby trash can. "Why would you throw away a perfectly good toy?" I asked gently. "You should take care of your things." "It's ugly," Leo said, his voice flat. "I don't like it at all." I didn't say anything. I knew that building things was not one of my strengths. The Lego model was uneven and looked clumsy. "You're not allowed to make Ryan go away," Leo continued, his brow furrowed. "I often think, if only Ryan were my dad, that would be so much better." He glared at me with clear resentment. "Remember, if Ryan leaves, I will never, ever forgive you." With that, he turned and ran off. I stayed where I was, frozen in place for a long, long time, feeling the warmth in my body slowly drain away. It was as if I was watching myself from a distance, a pathetic figure crouched in the hallway. I don't know how much time passed before I managed to stand up and walk mechanically toward the exit. Just as I was about to hail a taxi, a black sedan pulled up beside me. The window rolled down to reveal Clara's cold, expressionless face. "Get in?" Clara drove me to a small, familiar restaurant nearby. The owner recognized us immediately and greeted us with a warm smile. "The usual? 2 bowls of wonton soup?" Clara shook her head. "Just one." As I bent my head over the bowl to eat, Clara answered a phone call. "Ryan, what's wrong?" I couldn't help but watch her face. As she listened, the corners of her mouth lifted into a slight smile, and her eyes were soft and attentive. She used to look at me that way, but over time the space between us had grown wider, and our interactions had become colder. The gentle girl from my memories felt like someone I had dreamed up. I had even started to wonder if my memory was failing me. But seeing her now, I realized it wasn't. She still had that gentle side, it just wasn't for me anymore. In that instant, a deep and profound weariness settled over me. What was the point of this marriage, I wondered? What was the point of holding on for all this time? The thought made me feel weak, and the chopsticks almost fell from my grasp. I wanted to cry, but not in front of the woman Clara had become. I wanted to laugh, but in that moment, tears began to stream down my face without my control. Tears and snot dripped into my soup, making even the wontons taste salty and bitter. And in that moment, a strange thought crossed my mind. Why did even Ryan look so elegant when he cried? A pack of tissues was placed in front of me. Clara had ended her call and was looking at me with a concerned expression. "Did my father give you a hard time again?" She paused for a moment. "You don't have to push yourself so hard. You can always tell him no." Through my tears, I interrupted her, my voice surprisingly steady. "Clara, you were right. It would have been better for everyone if we had never met." Clara looked confused. "What are you talking about now?" I took a tissue from the pack, wiped my face, and finally spoke the words that had been sitting heavily on my heart for so long. "Clara, I want a divorce." If someone had told me 6 years ago that Clara and I would end up like this, as estranged and bitter individuals, I would have never believed it. After my parents passed away, I lost the only support system I had. My childhood was a chaotic series of moves from one relative's house to another. My life was defined by a constant state of uncertainty, never knowing when I would be uprooted and sent to a new home. Growing up in that environment, it was no surprise that I wasn't a particularly easy person to be around. After I was accepted into design school, I met the brilliant and popular Clara Reed. To this day, I still don't fully understand why, with all the handsome and talented men at our school, she chose to be with me. All I know is that our first love was incredibly sweet, and sweet things are often temporary. The first time I went home with Clara for the holidays, We hadn't even had a chance to sit down before her parents threw all the gifts I had brought, along with the two of us, out of their house. "If you are determined to marry him, then you can consider us no longer your parents." I stood shivering in the cold winter air. How had this happened? "They're always like this," Clara said, her expression calm. "They are control freaks. They always want to dictate my life." Seeing my pale face, she reached out and playfully pinched my cheek. I couldn't help but laugh as I dodged her hand, nearly losing my balance. "Don't worry about them," Clara said, taking my hand, completely unfazed. "I'm their only daughter. What parents can truly disown their son-in-law forever if their daughter refuses to back down?" The wide streets were covered in a fresh layer of snow, and holiday decorations lit up the storefronts around us. We walked through the snowy streets, flakes of snow falling on us until we looked like a pair of snowmen. We had nowhere to go, but when our eyes met, we both started laughing. After we had been walking for a while, I said with concern, "You should let me walk. I don't want you to get tired." Clara was insistent. "You have a weak constitution. If your shoes get soaked, you'll definitely get sick. And who will take care of you then? Me." She then whispered, "Besides, it's only natural for a wife to take care of her husband." Her words made me blush, but she just turned her head and gave me a mischievous smile. "Let's work hard, and in a few years we'll have a child. Let's see if they dare to kick us out then." My face was bright red. I gave her a gentle push, but I lost my balance, and we both fell into a snowdrift. In the end, it was Clara who caught a severe cold. We spent the entire holiday break in a hotel room. On New Year's Eve, Clara had taken cold medicine, but was still feverish and not fully coherent. I placed a cool, wet towel on her hot forehead, hoping her temperature would come down, but it stayed stubbornly high. I was close to tears. Although I never believed in gods or spirits, I found myself praying in silence. "Please, God, anyone, just make Clara better. I will gladly take on all her suffering myself." Late that night, Clara's fever finally broke. I was so exhausted that I fell asleep slumped over the side of the bed, missing the countdown to the new year. Much later, Clara told me something. She said that when she woke up in the middle of the night and saw me sleeping there, heard the sound of my quiet breathing, she decided in that moment that she would never love anyone else for the rest of her life. "What if you change your mind?" I asked her. Clara looked at me and said with complete seriousness, "Heaven and earth is my witness. If the Clara who betrays you ever exists, may she die a horrible death." Without the support of her family, Clara and I started our marriage with nothing. Clara was supposed to take over her mother's company, but she had a major falling out with her family because of me. Her father made it known in the business community that no company should hire her. Unable to secure a proper job, Clara delivered food during the day and worked late into the night on freelance design projects to earn money. As a design graduate myself, no company was willing to hire me either. I ended up working the night shift as a cashier at a bakery. At the end of my shift, I would bring home the leftover bread for Clara and me to eat. We were struggling financially, but since I had grown up learning to be frugal, I didn't find the adjustment too difficult. It was Clara, who had been accustomed to a life of comfort, who never once complained. As Clara started getting more and more design work, our financial situation slowly improved. At least we could afford to have a nice meal out once a week and didn't have to watch every penny we spent. Soon after, Clara became pregnant. 10 months later, Leo was born. Clara was incredibly happy, but she would often stare at her phone with a distant look. She desperately wanted to share the happy news with her parents, but her pride prevented her from being the first to reach out. I secretly got her father's phone number from an old classmate. One night while Clara was sleeping, I called and told her mother that our son was almost a month old. Mrs. Reed, who was away on a business trip, was thrilled and said she would come back immediately to see her grandson. Who could have known that this single phone call would be the catalyst for a tragedy that would cause us unending pain? Perhaps due to her emotional state, Mrs. Reed's car collided with a vehicle driving in the wrong lane on the freeway as she was rushing back. The car burst into flames upon impact and fell from an overpass, resulting in her death. Standing in the funeral home, the entire situation felt like an unbelievable nightmare. Clara and I were kneeling in front of the memorial altar. Mr. Reed walked up to me and, without saying a word, slapped me hard across the face. I didn't move. I knew deep down that I was responsible. "This is all your fault," Mr. Reed said, his eyes empty. "My daughter wouldn't listen to me because of you. And now my wife is dead because of you." He looked at me, his voice shaking as he asked, "What did our family ever do to you?" He lunged at me in a surge of anger, but Clara quickly stepped in to restrain him. His heartbroken sobs filled the funeral hall. Clara held him, her eyes red, but she never once looked in my direction. For the entire day she treated me as if I didn't exist. The quiet indifference was more painful than all of Mr. Reed's accusations. After the draining funeral, we saw the last of the guests off. It also happened to be Clara's birthday, so I had specially made a bowl of noodles, a traditional symbol of longevity. Clara's eyes rested on the bowl, allowing it to grow cold before she finally spoke, her voice so calm it was unnerving. "Ethan, it would have been better if I had never met you." The noodles in the bowl were no longer steaming. I quietly set down my chopsticks. Clara watched me, her expression a mix of anticipation and surprise. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I have paid my dues for all these years." Saying those words, which had been buried in my heart for so long, felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Besides, I'm sure there are plenty of people who would be happy to be the design director's husband. "Fine," was all Clara said. She stood up suddenly, as if she were trying to escape from something, and quickly left the dining room. Once the required waiting period was over, I got in touch with Clara to calmly go over the details of the divorce. We came to an agreement quickly. "You don't want Leo?" Clara asked. "He'll be in a better situation with you," I said, "and he would prefer to be with you anyway." The lawyer finalized the division of our assets, and the clerk at the city office stamped the official documents. Just like that, the marriage between Clara and me was legally over. As we were preparing to leave, it seemed as though the hard exterior Clara had built up over the years had softened slightly. She was quiet for a moment before speaking softly. "Ethan, you are still his father. Let's just let the past be the past. If things don't work out for you on your own, there will always be a room for you at the old house." I was taken aback. After all this time, I was finally hearing her say that she forgave me. But the person I had become no longer needed that forgiveness. I smiled. "Let's not. That wouldn't be fair to your new boyfriend. Besides, I'm confident I can build a good life for myself." With that, I walked away with a newfound sense of lightness. Clara remained seated, a thoughtful expression on her face. I moved into a new apartment and had no communication with the Reed family for a long time. After years of being a stay-at-home husband and father, trying to re-enter the professional world made me realize how competitive the job market was. While I was searching for jobs, I kept seeing news updates about Clara and Ryan. Either Ryan was with her at a design exhibition, or they were traveling to another country together for work. In the pictures, Clara looked thinner, and her gaze seemed even colder. Ryan was always close to her side, his eyes filled with admiration. Someone on social media accused Ryan of being a homewrecker, to which he quickly responded, "Sorry to disappoint you, but Clara is single now." Old friends began to message me, asking what was happening. I sent a standard reply to everyone. Yes, Clara and I have separated. Everyone expressed their regret and offered their sympathy, but only my friend Mark sent a different kind of message. How are you holding up? I replied honestly, looking for a job, but it's not going well. Do you have any openings? Mark responded right away. I knew you would ask me that sooner or later. You got tied down by marriage too early and became a father too fast. That's why you've been living in Clara's shadow for so long. Come work with me. Love, women. None of it is as reliable as having your own skills. Reading Mark's message, I couldn't help but smile. Mark and his partner had established a design studio, and I was about to begin a new chapter of my life as an assistant designer. I worked overtime nearly every day. Even though Mark and I were friends, I didn't want to take this hard-earned opportunity for granted. A festive mood filled the office as my co-workers received gifts from their partners. I figured all that celebration had nothing to do with me. But then my phone rang. Assuming it was a food delivery, I told the person on the line to just leave it at the front desk. But the caller insisted that I had to sign for it in person, explaining that it was a valuable item. I opened the document folder. Inside was a property deed for a standalone villa worth $500 million, located in the most exclusive luxury residential area in the city center. I opened the deed, and my name was clearly written on it. There was no note inside the folder, but I knew who had sent this gift. I put the documents back in the folder and asked the courier to return them. Time passed without any major events. My messenger app, which had been silent for a long time, suddenly lit up with a new message. I thought you wanted it. I stared at the screen for a few moments before typing my reply. I don't need it anymore. A response came back almost immediately. Ha! I blocked Clara on all my accounts. After 3 months as Mark's assistant, I was finally promoted to a full-time position. Mark asked me, Ethan, we were friends before all of this, but you don't seem to resent me for just ordering you around all day now. I was in the middle of revising a design plan. I thought for a moment and said, Speaking of ordering around, aren't you the one who always gets my coffee from the front desk? Besides, didn't you have me start from the bottom so I could get familiar with the company quickly and avoid any office gossip? Mark laughed. Now that you say it like that, I'd feel bad if I didn't promote you. I was curious. What kind of promotion? It's not a position. It's a design project for a major client. I have the authority to recommend someone for the interview. My heart suddenly began to beat faster. Are you saying, you could recommend me? Mark let out a low chuckle. It's not out of the question, but back in school you were the best in our class. I wouldn't have had any doubts then, but the you of today. He gave me a playful look. Do you still remember how to design? I promise I won't embarrass you at the interview. The interview was scheduled for a week later. I never imagined I would see Ryan there. He was just as surprised to see me. Then, his eyes shifted around the room, and he whispered something to the hiring manager. When I received the news that I didn't get the job, I was disappointed, but Mark didn't seem concerned. It was just a small project. There will be plenty of other opportunities. One evening, while I was having dinner with Mark, I happened to run into the project lead from that interview. When he went to the restroom, I followed him into the hallway. I quickly explained my design philosophy and expressed my hope for a chance to work with him. The man gave a few non-committal uh-huhs, tucked my business card into his suit pocket, and walked back to the dining area. A cold laugh came from behind me. I turned and saw Clara standing by the sinks. In the mirror's reflection, her body was still, but her icy gaze was focused on me. You'd have more success begging me than begging him. I didn't reply and turned to leave, but Clara suddenly reached out and grabbed the hood of my jacket. She looked at me, and the sunlight streaming in from the windows on either side seemed to soften the coldness that usually surrounded her. In that moment, she didn't look like the Clara I had been married to. She looked a bit like the Clara I had first met in college. "Ethan," Clara said softly, "add me back on your messenger. I'll give you a design director position. How does that sound?" I was completely bewildered. I pulled my hood back from her grasp and said 2 words to her. "You're insane. I sent my resume to many other companies, but I never heard back." 3 months later, the same project lead who had rejected me called. "I have a project. Are you interested?" And that's how I finally secured my first design project. It was only when I arrived at the site that I learned the lead designer was Ryan. As for me, I was just a regular designer working under him. At the very first meeting, Ryan tore my design proposal apart in front of everyone. Yes, just from that description, it sounds like a classic example of workplace bullying. I even had a suspicion that Ryan had specifically gotten me on this project to get revenge, adding this humiliation to his list of grievances. But the contract had been signed. If I walked away now, I could forget about ever finding work in this industry again. Besides, it was just criticism. I lowered my eyes and sneered internally. Haven't I been berated by Mr. Reed enough times? As I had anticipated, Ryan rejected a dozen of my proposals during that meeting. By the time the discussion was over, my professional pride had been completely shattered. He covered his mouth, his eyes wide and pitiful as he looked at me. "Bro, this is all for the good of the project. You're not mad at me, are you?" I didn't miss the brief flash of triumph in his eyes. I sighed and looked at him. "Actually, you're a bit of a disappointment." He looked completely confused, biting his lip. I didn't tell him that if you are truly set on ruining someone, you don't leave any evidence. This clumsy, flawed approach was just too amateurish. I couldn't believe this was someone Mr. Reed had personally trained. When I got back to the office, Mark saw the look on my face. "What happened?" After I explained everything, his expression became serious. "That bastard Ryan, he's really pushing it. You just let him humiliate you like that?" "I recorded it," I said. Mark gave me a look of approval. "Good. At least you didn't just take it. Pretty smart." Soon, a video was posted on all the major design forums with the headline, "Famous Designer RT Maliciously Bullies Subordinate in Meeting." My face was blurred, but Ryan's expressions were perfectly visible. As a result, Ryan's already questionable reputation plummeted. My real identity was quickly discovered. The entire complicated history between me, Ryan, and Clara was unearthed and dissected by people online. As the ex-husband, I naturally occupied the moral high ground. Everyone was convinced that Ryan had seduced Clara, leading to me being abandoned by my cheating ex-wife. The public's disdain for Ryan and Clara was as strong as their sympathy for me. Brands and projects that had been collaborating with Ryan quickly cut their ties. Clara, as the CEO of a major corporation, hadn't been making any public appearances recently, so the damage to her was minimal. You could say that by leveraging the notoriety of Clara and Ryan, I experienced a brief period of fame. Design firms and well-known brands from all over started contacting me. But the most significant offer came from a project Mark brought to me. "You're the lead designer. If you accept, you can start tomorrow. But I need to be upfront. The client is your ex-wife's company. So, Ethan, think carefully about whether you want to take this project." I took the project file home and spent the entire night studying it. The next day I told Mark, "The design direction is exactly what I'm interested in. I'll take it. But I have to ask, was it Clara who wanted me as the lead designer?" "You wouldn't do it if it was her." I was quiet for a long time before finally answering. If I had more options, I would refuse, but at this moment I have no other choice but to accept. "Good. You know how to play the game?" Mark said, lightly tapping my forehead. "Ethan, you've really grown up." I gave him a bitter smile. Mark continued, "Actually, I was the one who chose you. I invested $50 million in the project. With me supporting you, no one can replace you." I stood there, stunned. I had encountered so little kindness over the years that for a moment I didn't know how to react. 1,000 words of gratitude swirled in my mind, but all I could manage was to give him a tight hug. Mark blinked. "Don't get too emotional. At my core, I'm still a profit-driven businessman. You just do your best. This project has at least an 80% chance of success." Although we were now working together, Clara and I kept a polite and professional distance. There were several times when Clara looked like she wanted to say something, but after seeing my cold expression, she would turn away, her face looking troubled. 3 months passed quickly. Then, on a rainy night as the project was nearing completion, whether it was due to the driver's carelessness or the poor road conditions, the taxi I was in suddenly lost control, skidded, and crashed into the guardrail. The world spun around me, and my ears were filled with the sound of screeching tires. I thought I felt someone pull open the car door and hold me, but a sharp, violent blow to my head sent me into darkness. I fell into a dream. First, I dreamed of Clara. She was sitting in her office, looking at our divorce papers with a cold smile on her face. "Ethan, it would have been better if I had never met you." Then, I dreamed of my son, Leo. He was holding a toy and looking at me with a hurt expression. If only Uncle Ryan was my dad. I called his name repeatedly, but Leo just put on his backpack and happily walked away. The past flashed through my mind like a series of slides, finally stopping on one particular image. A funeral home. My mother was lying peacefully in her casket, surrounded by flowers and white cloth. Tears fell, wetting the lid of the coffin. My father stood behind me, trying to hold back his own tears, his hands gripping my shoulders tightly. He was crying because he was now a widower. At only 6 years old, I was completely unaware of the finality of it all. After the funeral, my father quietly left. I was left behind like a little beggar in a dilapidated house. There was no food, no clean clothes. I had to search through trash cans to find something to eat. After 6 months, I was thin, dark, and filthy. Finally, my father came back. But when he saw me, there was no joy on his face. Instead, he broke down, shouting, "Why are you still here? Why did you have to wait for me?" Terrified, I hid under a table, trembling. My father stared at me, then suddenly grabbed a rusty knife from the kitchen, tears streaming down his face. "Ethan, if I had never had you, would everything be different?" All these years, I had always been the one who was left behind. The people I was closest to either wished I were dead or wished I had never been born. No one had ever truly loved me. Even the brief moments of warmth were just illusions that disappeared in an instant. I had always lived in the shadows, unloved and with no expectations. If God had let me live only to experience this suffering, then what was the point of living at all? Looking at the man holding the knife, a hopeful smile spread across my face. "Dad, are you finally here to take me with you?" As my life seemed to be fading, I stopped fighting. I felt my consciousness breaking apart into specks of light, slowly drifting away. Then, I heard a song. It was a sad male voice, like the lullabies my father used to sing to me when I was a child. "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream." He had wanted to end my life, but his eyes were filled with a deep, loving kindness. A sharp pain shot through my heart, but then the image of a smiling face flashed in my mind. Mark. He was still waiting for me. He had invested $50 million in me. He had never given up on me. In that instant, a powerful desire to live surged through my body. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital room. Clara was slumped over the side of the bed, asleep, with faint shadows of exhaustion under her eyes. I moved slightly, trying to reach the call button for the nurse, but Clara's eyes opened instantly, and she pressed it first. She stared at me. "Ethan, is it so difficult for you to ask me for help?" "Why are you here?" I asked. "You were in a car accident. I called the police." Clara's voice was hoarse. "They've already determined that someone tampered with the brakes. It was Ryan. He bribed the mechanic. He's young and foolish. I'll apologize to you." "On his behalf," Clara said. I shook my head. "It wasn't Ryan." Clara started to say something, but I pointed to the door. "Can you please leave? I want to rest." She got up and walked toward the door, then turned back halfway. "Who was it then?" I met her gaze, then looked away. "It has nothing to do with you." Clara stared at me, and then her anger erupted. She kicked the hospital room door. "Right. It has nothing to do with you. You almost died, and that has nothing to do with me, is that it? Ethan, I wish I could cut open your chest and see if there's anything inside. Yes, my mother died because of you, but when have I ever blamed you for it? You blocked me. You changed the locks on our home. I was married, not widowed. In all these years, have you ever once fulfilled your duties as a husband? Have you ever once considered my feelings or understood how hard it is to be your wife?" I was silent for a long time. "Clara, you were the one who proposed. So this is all my own damn fault?" Clara laughed coldly. "Then there's really nothing left for us to say." She slammed the door and stormed out, filled with resentment. I thought she wouldn't return. But at noon, Clara walked in with a grim face, carrying a lunchbox. She didn't say a word, but carefully arranged the containers of food. "Thank you," I finally said. The nurse on her rounds glanced at us and said with a smile, "You two are such a loving couple." "Thank you," Clara replied. "We're divorced," I said at the same time. Clara's face instantly fell. The nurse, sensing the awkwardness, quickly changed my IV and left. I expected Clara to get angry, but she just lowered her head. It was as if her perpetually straight spine had suddenly bent. "Ethan, I almost thought I'd never see you again. I finally understand. As long as you're safe and healthy by my side, nothing else matters." She looked at me for a moment, then said seriously, "Look at you. You're so much thinner than you were in college. Ethan." She turned her face away, her voice choked with emotion. "It hasn't been easy for you all these years either, has it? I was wrong. All this time I was so focused on my own pain that I ignored the immense suffering you were going through. We can't change the past, but the future is still long. Can you let me stay by your side forever and spend the rest of my life making it up to you?" I didn't respond. I just remained silent. The room was quiet. The glimmer of hope in Clara's eyes slowly faded. "You don't want to. In the end, it's still because of my mother's death. You've always resented me for it." "What do I resent you for?" I asked softly. "You resent me for taking my anger out on you?" "So you finally admit it," I laughed. "You knew all along. You were taking your anger out on me." I emphasized the words, "taking your anger out," and angrily turned my head away. That night, Clara had looked at that bowl of birthday noodles and said she wished she had never met me. At that moment, I had stood there, completely humiliated. If I hadn't made that phone call, if I hadn't told her mother about the baby, Mrs. Reed wouldn't have come back that night. Clara's mother, her father's wife, wouldn't have died. An overwhelming sense of guilt washed over me. I just stood there, thinking over and over, why wasn't I the one who died in that car crash? After that, no matter how angry Mr. Reed got, no matter what he did to me, I never said a word. No matter what, I owed them a life for Mrs. Reed. But I never expected Mr. Reed to take Leo away. I held my son, refusing to let go. But Mr. Reed brought several relatives and forcibly took Leo from me. I called Clara, tears streaming down my face. He said I could give him back anything else, but he can't take Leo. How can such a small child be separated from me? There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Clara finally spoke. You lost your child, but he lost his wife. Besides, you can see Leo any time, but his wife is never coming back. Letting Leo stay with him is just giving him a little hope to live on. Can't you even grant that small request? You can come back to the mansion whenever you want to see Leo. But Ethan, my mother is already gone because of you. Do you have to drive my father away too? With every word I repeated from Clara's past, her face grew paler. It was those words that forced me to rely on handfuls of antidepressants just to function. Every time I think about them, I feel like life is meaningless, like it would be better to just end it all. Clara stared at me, numb. I continued. Until one day, my therapist said something that was like a revelation. He told me that what separates humans from other creatures is self-awareness. To build an accurate perception of oneself, to discover one's inner worth. In other words, to define oneself reasonably, and to accept that self from the bottom of one's heart. To deny parts of oneself is to destroy one's own psychological foundation. Self-respect is the fundamental basis for the continuation of life. That was a wake-up call. If I kept letting your accusations and condemnations echo in my ears, I would eventually break down. I finally figured it out. My mother-in-law's accident had nothing to do with me. You shouldn't have blamed me for it, and you certainly shouldn't have used it as a reason to hurt me. As for you, Clara, no matter how many apologies you offer now, you can't erase the trauma you caused me. I choose not to forgive you. That's not just my right. It's about reclaiming my self-respect. Ryan was just a pawn for you. If you really want to change, then stop messing with other people's lives. I've said my piece. Please leave. Clara stood up stiffly, staring at me. There was never anything between Ryan and me. I just saw how distant you were, and I wanted to provoke you. Anything was better than you ignoring me completely. I shook my head and closed my eyes, exhausted. That night, Mark rushed back from his trip. He stood guard at my hospital room door, ensuring Clara couldn't get near me again. I was in the hospital for 2 whole months. The final checkup report showed that, thankfully, there were no lasting complications. I have 2 pieces of good news for you, Mark said. One was that the final version of the design plan was complete. The other was that Ryan had been sentenced to 3 years for attempted murder. After the verdict, Ryan panicked and confessed everything in prison, including the fact that my father-in-law, Mr. Reed, had tampered with Mrs. Reed's brakes 6 years ago, causing the fatal accident. Mark watched my reaction. You don't seem surprised at all, he said suddenly. It's like you already knew. It was true, I did know. I just hadn't known for long. One day when my father-in-law was napping in his room, he kept calling out his wife's name. His voice wasn't filled with longing for his late wife, but with deep fear and unease. That became one of the main reasons I finally decided to file for divorce. I had thought I was atoning for a sin, but I had been carrying a false accusation from the very beginning. Because of Ryan's confession, the public learned that Mrs. Reed's death was not an accident, but a murder. The police brought my father-in-law in for questioning. He vehemently denied it, but to reduce his own sentence, Ryan provided a recording of a phone call Mr. Reed had with a family member back then. In the recording, Mr. Reed's voice was ice cold. That kind of woman, so glamorous on the outside, but she's been having an affair for ages. Every time I see her, I wish she would just disappear. She's going to see Clara tomorrow. Tamper with her car tonight. An attempted murder case had uncovered an even bigger murder. This turn of events left Clara anxious and devastated. Soon, news came that my father-in-law, who was supposed to be in custody, had escaped. As the police launched a massive manhunt for him, I lay in my hospital bed with a sense of unease. I woke up with a start to find a hunched, dark figure standing by my bed, staring down at me coldly. I was shocked. Dad? It was my father-in-law. I had no idea how he had gotten into the hospital. His face was twisted. "Don't call me Dad!" A glint of metal flashed from his sleeve. I immediately realized he had a weapon. My father-in-law was really going to kill me. "Dad?" I said, looking at him calmly. "Is something wrong?" He stared at me and let out a sinister laugh. "Aren't you scared? You were the first one to know. Why didn't you ever say anything?" He said viciously, "Now that the police have found out, I have nothing left to lose. I used to live in fear every day, worried you'd spill the beans. Ethan, it's all your fault that my life has been so miserable." I sighed. "Dad, I never had any proof. Even if I had said something, no one would have believed me. What were you afraid of?" He raised the knife and sneered. "I'm already done for. If I'm going down, I'm taking someone with me." I remained seated on the hospital bed, watching him, not flinching or screaming. But my father-in-law's face, holding the knife aloft, began to show hesitation. "Why aren't you scared?" I looked at him, my mind racing, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad, you hated your wife's betrayal, yet during my marriage to Clara, you constantly tried to set her up with Ryan. You hated that your daughter listened to me more, yet you used every trick in the book to take Leo away from me and even tried to turn him against me. All these years, has your way of fighting the people and things you hate been to become an even more hateful person yourself?" His expression clearly froze for a moment. "Peter Reed, do you remember your own name?" I said softly. "Before you married my mother-in-law, you were a brilliant designer, an independent individual, not defined as someone's appendage. Hate has blinded you. You've not only hurt others, you've destroyed yourself. Are you going to continue down this path, making yourself even more contemptible?" "So what?" He was silent for a long time. Then tears streamed down his wrinkled face, and he let out a crazed laugh. "I have no way out." He raised the knife to strike me. Just then, a figure burst through the door, tackled him to the ground, and the two of them rolled on the floor. My father-in-law frantically raised the knife and stabbed at the person on top of him. When he recognized who had tackled him, he let out a piercing scream. "Clara!" Law enforcement officers rushed in immediately, handcuffed him, and led him away. Clara was left lying on the floor, a bloody wound spreading across her chest. An officer beside her shouted, "Get a doctor! We need a medic now!" Her eyes were still open, her expression dazed and vacant. We were only a few feet apart, our eyes locked. In her final moments, Clara used all her strength to say two things. "I'm sorry for all the pain I put you through all these years. And honey, my heart hurts so much. It all happened so suddenly. I never thought Clara would show up at the hospital only to die at the hands of her own crazed father." Despite all the resentment between us, what came to mind at that moment was a completely ordinary memory. That year, after being kicked out by her family, Clara and I had fallen in the rain. Lying on the wet ground, neither of us could be bothered to get up. We just lay there, watching the raindrops fall from the sky, our fingers intertwined, unwilling to let go. She looked up at the rain and whispered in my ear, "Ethan, look. Do you think this counts as us making it to the end together?" The next day, Clara passed away from the stab wound to her abdomen after surgery was unsuccessful. All the love, hate, and grudges vanished with the wind. My first major project as a designer was the last real estate project Clara had personally overseen. Marketed as the final work of the Reed Industries CEO, the project was a massive success upon completion. Mark would grin from ear to ear just counting the profits he was raking in. After Clara and my father-in-law passed away, most of their estate was left to Leo. I had a lawyer set up a trust fund to ensure his future was secure. I continued my work as a designer, and as my reputation grew, Mark and I co-founded our own design studio. Not long after, I brought Leo back from the old mansion. The butler and nannies had been taking care of him. Perhaps because he had lost so many family members, he cried and threw himself into my arms when he saw me. "First, apologize to Dad," I said, taking a step back. "Because last time you said things that hurt my feelings." The little guy said through his tears, "I'm sorry, Daddy." I later found out that the butler had shown him the news reports. Even though he was young, he understood that people who go to prison are not good people. I didn't want to be too hard on Leo. He was only 4, and he had grown up with his grandfather, spending very little time with me. When he got older, he would naturally be able to tell right from wrong. Besides, I thought of that dream I had in the hospital. When I was 6, my father did want to give up on me, but not out of hate. Our family was too poor. Living without anyone to care for you was pointless. But he watched me curled up under the chair for a long time, and in the end, he gave up on giving up, his face wet with tears. He picked me up, washed me, and even bought me a lollipop. Then he knocked on one relative's door after another until he found a family willing to take me in. He had intended to abandon me, but in the end, he gave me a warm embrace before disappearing alone into the vast world. People in this world seem to be like that. A mix of kindness and darkness, a glimmer of light hidden within evil. Even now, I can't quite say what I'm living for. Perhaps there's no need to ask for meaning in the first place. After all, life's endings are rarely what we hope for. It's either separation or a tangled web of love and hate. But none of that matters. To have experienced those unforgettable moments together is enough. Because a moment of sincerity is an eternity of meaning.